back. New app, more teardowns, more hot takes.
Yeah, gotta be done on it. We've got a lot to get through.
This week, clickbait title, you actually need a higher CPA. So we're going to dive into what a business should actually be spending all of their time focusing on. And just mainly how the brands that win are the ones that spend all the time working on being able to afford a higher CAC, as opposed to obsessed with getting a lower in-ad account CAC.
Yeah. Obviously, all the time we deal with founders who come in and they say, I need a lower CPA. This CPA doesn't work for us to scale.
Mm-hmm.
We need to, we need a new agency who can build a new ad account structure and drive a lower CPA. But the problem is with that, a lot of the time, especially in a world of meta and auctions and how these things work, is like realistically every year CPMs go up and a lot of the time so do CPAs, right? So if you're kind of spending all your time and energy trying to figure out how you can drive that CPA down, it's going up regardless of how much energy you put into that, right? And even if you can get it down temporarily by 10 to 15% by a new ad account structure, more creative, whatever that looks like, that's a short-term game, really. And at some point, that CPA is going to, it's going to outrun you because that's the way that advertising works. Every year, the cost to be on Meta and anything else goes up. So, yeah, that's why we wanted to make this episode, because your focus really should be on building a business that can afford a higher CPA rather than trying to drive your CPA down.
Yeah, 100%. I think, like the first pillar is really why chasing a lower CPA is a losing game. It's like you can't outrun the CPM rise. And also when you want to scale, your CPA is going to go up naturally. That's just the way that it always works. I've never seen a brand really whereby CPA comes down as you're scaling aggressively. I just don't think that world exists. It only goes one way. And, especially when you're in health and wellness and some of these markets where, competition rises as, certain niches get popular. Like a rise in CPAs is just anecdotal of being in the market as opposed to being something that needs to be fixed. What you need to work on, and the best brands that we work with are the ones that are consistently driving the amount of margin they can afford on the back end of their business so they can afford a higher CPA on the front end with the marketing.
Yeah, 100%. Even if you do get your CPA down temporarily, as soon as you then scale, as a result, it's like, okay, my CPA's come down, now I can scale. As soon as you increase budget, it's going to go back up again, right? So then you're going to have to scale back down again. And then that's the rut that a lot of businesses we speak to are in. It's like, every time I scale, my CPA goes up and it no longer makes sense, so we have to scale back. Mm-hmm. Actually, the fix there is not changing your ad account structure. It's building a business that can have a higher allowable CAC. That's the only fix, right? And that 100%. Comes from, as you just said there, you just alluded to margin, but also LTV, and there's a couple of other levers in there to make that happen. But ultimately, if you've got two businesses selling the same product, same conversion rate, same AOV, same everything, which one can afford a higher CAC is the one with a better margin, which means that business is more scalable. Simple, right?
100%. Yeah, and there's various ways you can work on that, right? I think one of the problems brands tend to face is as they scale, they get bloated, right? They make hires, they increase the fixed costs, they get certain SaaS, certain softwares, certain bums on seats that probably aren't super necessary. And I think one of the common things that we see with our high scaling brands, people spending 15, 20, 25K a day, is their teams are super small, super lean. We've got one that's got a team of 6, 7, who's doing 25, 30 mil a year. And that's only allowable because all the time they're working on driving the margin on the back end. They're super conscious of fixed costs and anything that will take away from what you can afford to pay for an actual sale.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other probably episode in it around OPEX. Obviously, we speak to our clients about OPEX all the time, and I know you've done a few episodes with Dan Major where he's talked about that. But ultimately, what we always say is every time you add to your OPEX, that means that you're allowable CAC goes down, right?
Yeah.
Unless your margin goes up in line with your OPEX going up, but that doesn't happen most of the time, right? It's like every time you add to your it never happens. Every time you add to your payroll, you add to your OPEX in any way. Now you need a better CPA for the business to still work, right?
Yeah.
That's simple as that. For the business to still have that same net margin, if your OPEX goes up, your CPA has to come down because they are the levers that work in opposite directions, right? MER and OPEX work in opposite directions. So that's the other thing is like, how can your business allow the highest CAC possible and still be able to scale? Well, gross margin, fixed costs, product development, LTV is a massive factor, right?
New TAMs,
new product, which you can then sell to the same, email list of customers that you've already acquired. These are the levers that allow the same business to have a higher allowable CAC, which allows the same business to scale more. Ultimately, the game in e-com for everyone should be, how can my business work with the highest CAC possible? Everyone should be trying to make that happen within their brand, but instead most founders work in the opposite direction, which makes no sense.
Yeah, and I think actually it's not what we're saying is not, don't stop trying to drive your CPA down. Yeah, because that's an always on thing that just needs to happen. Creative, landing pages, like everything else that's going on, but you need to obsess also on making your business durable so it can survive tough conditions, right? Like, how many brands this year are getting squalls out because CPMs have been through the roof, right? And conversion rates have dropped, which is, indicative of where the market's at right now. So their conversion rate's not as strong as last year. But because their margins are low, they're a, 50, 60, 65% gross margin business. It now means that you've got a serious cap on where you can grow. There's a glass ceiling and you can't see it. And that's what you alluded to at the start. Every time you scale, you spend up by £500, £600, £700 a day. It just doesn't work anymore because you've hit a new tier of spending matter that you just can't afford to play in. So then you have to come back down for it to make sense. And a lot of the time, people don't have an ad account problem, a creative problem. They have a business metrics problem. Like, your click-through rate's only going to go so high. Your ad account structure is probably absolutely fine. Your conversion rate is only going to go so high unless you unlock it with offer, products, like whatever else that you spoke about. Your LTV can only go so far. And at some point, you're going to come across a point where all those metrics are like prim and proper. And actually now you've just got a business economics problem.
Yeah, that's all it is. Like, and even if your ad account structure is a problem, by fixing that, you're talking about marginal gains here. You're talking about, we say this all the time to new brands that come on, like 10% max, 20% absolute max if your ad account's a car crash. You're not going to change your ad account structure and your CPA is going to come down from 50 quid to fucking 15 quid. That's not how it works, right?
No.
That's just not how it works.
I mean, it'd be ideal if it did.
No, that's not how it works. It's marginal. It's marginal.
It would be ideal if that did happen. And if anyone else is doing that, give me a shout and let me know exactly how it's happening.
You restructure the ad account and your CPA comes down at best 10%. And then...
The only times that does happen...
you go based on that. There's not much more to do there.
No, you can get that CPA change, but usually that'll come with like a cost control, and then you lose volume, right?
Yeah.
And need a certain amount of volume to cover the fixed costs in a business. So I think it's a double-edged sword, but for sure people concentrate on the worst levers, I think, right? Which is like they're trying to bring the CPA down by having ad account tweaks rather than making their business durable enough to last in the long term, regardless of CPM rises, tax, and everything else that's coming in.
I spoke to a brand, I think it was Thursday or Wednesday, that booked in a discovery with us, and it was a water bottle brand doing decent numbers. They've kind of tapped out the time and said to me that their CPA, they need a £7.50 blended CPA to scale, and year to date they're at like a £23.50 blended CPA, right? And she basically said to me, she was like, that's why we changed the agency. We need to bring that CPA down by 3-4x. Otherwise, we're just going to have to scale back. And I was just like, you're not going to do that. You're not going to, I hate to break it to you, and I don't want to be that guy, but like, you're not going to bring
80% reduction in CPA.
You're not gonna, no matter what agency you go with, you are not gonna bring your blended CPA down from £23.50 to £7.50 at your level of spend. I think it was like £1,500 a day. Impossible. The only way you're gonna do that is by retreating so far back to the point where there's no volume. You're probably not going to be able to pay your fixed costs as a business because your sales are going to come down 3-4x as in line with your budget. So it's like, understand that if your CPA has to be that low, there's a massive, very limited ceiling on where you can take the business. That's it. That's the top and bottom of it. I guess that's.
But it's a business metrics problem because in actual fact, if you're running your ads on highest volume, you can cap out your TAM whenever you want, but you better be able to pay the CPA that you're gonna be charged for it, right?
Yeah.
Like, can you go and get me more sales? Yes. Will they be incremental or have diminished returns? You have to find out when you put your budget on. But ultimately, there's always volume for you to go and get there, right? It's just whether you can afford to pay for that volume.
And this is another episode that we've got briefed in is around like the way that the auction works and understanding that like every time you scale into that next tranche of spend, you're playing against more high sophisticated players that have got better unit economics. They can afford a higher CAC. A lot of the time they're backed by venture capital, like all these things that mean that you're now competing with brands every time you increase spend that can afford a higher CPA. So you're going to lose in the auction then, right?
Yeah.
Simple as that. That's the way it works.
And remember that you're not just competing against your competitors on Meta. You've got like horizontal competitors, right?
Yeah,
so like if you're in the health and wellness, you're now competing against IMA, right? Like, because they're in there as well. They might not be selling in a specific supplement that you're selling, but you are in competition with them. Because for Will, I might buy certain health supplements, certain clothes, certain, furniture, cosmetics, whatever it may be. But I've only got so much share of wallet. So you're competing with everyone, not just your direct competitors, because you're on a pay-per-view platform. It's a demand gen platform. Yeah, and those kind of operators, the Ridge Wallets and Money Devoirs and these kind of people in the world, like, they are dialed. They've got their systems and operations dialed so that they can afford the highest possible CAC. I see people like Jordan Menard talking about scaling at like a 0.8 ROAS. Right?
Well, doesn't Ridge scale at a 48 or 50% MER? I'm sure I've seen that or heard that on the operators at some point.
Would not surprise me.
Because their gross margin, obviously, it's mainly a one-time purchase product of wallets, which is a hero product. I'm sure I've heard Sean Frank say their gross margin is so exceptional and their fixed costs are so low in proportion to the revenue that they do that they scale into a 50% MER.
Yeah.
Which is just mental, right? Yeah. That water bottle brand, I said to her, what's your target MER? She said 5%.
Yeah, it's mental. And you look at brands that, and the thing is, this is what you've seen this year, like the brands that need a 4 blended to be like profitable, it's getting tougher every year for them to be at a 4 blended. Or if you do need to be at 4 blended, understand that your ceiling's going to come a lot sooner than your TAM, than you exhausting your TAM, right? Because you've got a business economics ceiling as opposed to we've exhausted Meta, we've tapped it out. We've been seen by everyone we possibly need to see. And now we've got a net new customer problem. You don't have a net new customer problem. You just can't afford to acquire customers in that higher tier of spend.
You can't afford, you're not built and ready to play at this next level of, of game. That's the way it is. Like, your business isn't set up to survive at this next tranche of spend. That's the top and bottom of it. And I think, we say this all the time with our internal brand. Like, we have an expectation. Mm-hmm. We have an expectation every single year that our CPA is going to go up next year versus what it is this year. That's an expectation that we have, and we're completely okay with it, and we're working on it, ahead of time, because that's just the way that Meta works. Like, how many brands have we had now for 3, 4, 5 years that we've been working with? And their CPA has slightly crept up every year, but they're fine with it because they're at more volume, their spend's gone up, they've got better suppliers, like all these things that we're talking about here, which is like, you as an e-com operator, you should just have an expectation that next year your CPA is going to be higher than it is this year. But what a lot of people think is it'll be lower because we've been around for an extra year.
Oh my, that's actually one of my pet hates. It's like the brand's at a stage now where I feel like we can double. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
And do you think you're going to double and your CPA comes down? Like that's just not going to happen.
No.
Being a year older doesn't mean that people just buy more from you. Like that's just not how it works.
Well, we've got an extra year of brand awareness now, and it's like, yeah. So you've tapped out your time even more, which
and
means
and your email. They're like, oh, we got X amount of followers on your email list. It's like, well, okay, well your open rates, times that by your open rate, then times that by your conversion rate, and that's actually not a lot of sales, right?
No, it's not.
In comparison to what you might think in your mind. The number of people on the email list that's grown might be, but like when you're actually baking your actual business metrics to it, it doesn't actually make a lot of sense. So what are the main levers that we use to allow a higher CPA?
The main levers for an e-com founder to be looking at in regards to how can I make this business work at a higher CPA would be gross margin, would be net margin after returns as well as another factor, right? Like, if you've got, we work with a lot of fashion brands, and a lot of those fashion brands we know what the industry standard return rates are. Some of ours beat that by 10%. Some of ours go up to 40%. And it's like, in that instance,
it's not going to work.
It's not going to work. If you improve your return rates, you drop that to industry standard or below, now you can afford a higher allowable CAC, right?
Yep.
Simple. So I think gross margin, net margin, product development, bringing out new products so that feeds into the next point, which is LTV, because if we have, if we go and develop more products, then we can sell these new products to our existing customer base, which means that the average customer is typically worth more to us over a 6, 9, 12-month period, which then means our CAC target can now increase because we've got this data to suggest that our customers, our customer lifetime value is going up by 20, 30, 40%, right? So,
and you don't need to pay for that next sale. If you're doing things right and you're doing it correct, that current customer base, you get to sell to them without a CPA. Right?
No, 100%. And I think the retention piece as well is like, obviously we've got an email and SMS service. We are predominantly, paid ads. That's what 70 brands are on. We've got about 20 brands on the email piece. Retention is like something that a lot of brands just kick to the curb and they just don't even give it the time and attention it needs.
No.
It's like they spend so much energy on, sharpening the ad sword and more creative and more diverse creative and different ad agencies. And your retention engine is just something that you just kick to the curb and forget about. You send one email whenever you can be bothered.
One email a week. Your flows haven't been looked at for 9 months. Some of them have got products in that they don't even sell anymore. It's crazy how neglected they get.
But those retention systems, those flows, the segmenting, everything that you can do over on that side of things is what's going to drive and make the business realize its highest possible LTV again, which then directly feeds into your allowable CPA, because if your LTV is higher, so is your allowable CPA. So these are the factors. What I would say would be like margin, gross and net, product development, LTV, retention. They're kind of the key levers. And if you are an e-com founder that's in this, having this conversation internally with your team and being like, we need a lower CPA for this to work. Shall we go and hire another agency? Shall we go and get some audits? I would just look at these sort of levers that we've just ran through and ask yourself before jumping to another agency, have you pulled these levers as much as possible?
Do you even know what they are?
Do you even know what they are? If you have, if you can seriously say, my margin can't improve, my product development can't improve, my LTV is as good as it can be, my retention piece is unbelievable, then fair enough. But I would bet that for 99% of listeners, there are levers here that can be pulled.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, product development you can never tap out. So like bringing out, if you're like, there's nothing more we can do on product. That's like just a mental statement. 99% of your problems can be solved by product. And I think if you look at your brand and we say gold standard gross margins 80%, right? That's like, if you want to be a brand that can scale always, be in and around that margin. If you're now going to go and look at your catalog of products and you look at your SKU level margin and you've got no products that are near that 80%, your next product development needs to be for a product that is 80% and above, right?
Yeah,
that's what it needs to be. So don't bring it out because the design's nice, don't bring it out because you like it, it fits well with what you need to look for a product that fits that margin, so that you can go and fulfill capacity at a higher CPA. Like that needs to be the next thing that you bring out, because you will unlock new TAM with higher margin. That'll unlock more spend. More spend means more volume.
Yeah. On the product development piece, it's obviously the hardest lever to pull on here because it's very, cash intensive. So that's why when I said if there's nothing to pull there, I meant like in terms of, if the business has not got the cash to go and develop, an unbelievable new 80% plus gross margin product in the next 90 to 120 days.
Mm-hmm.
But 100%, that's something that's always turning, and it's never perfect and never a finished job, right? But I think that's the key thing, like understanding that, and again, it's great for us on the outside looking in across 70 different brands and understanding that, like, okay, this list of partners here has 80% gross margin and their MER target as a result of that is X. This list of brands here, their gross margin on average is 50%, which means that they're getting stuck at typically this level of spend, right? It's like we see this all the time.
Yeah, I agree. And I think just rephrase, like, we're not saying don't work on trying to get your CPA down. That's definitely not the message. The message is also understand that changing agency, creative, ad account switches are not the biggest levers. And we are going to do a series on levers. But I think just reframing it to be like, what's the highest CAC I could possibly afford and what's the blocker to getting there? And fix that blocker and you'll usually unlock some scale.
Yeah. That's kind of the conclusion of the episode, really. Definitely always, if you can drive your CAC down slightly, that's great. But I would spend more energy focusing on how I can afford and survive at a higher CAC, essentially.
100%. Build your model, around having the highest CAC you could possibly afford. If it's not there right now, if your average margin is below 80%, your next product development that you're going to be doing needs to be focused on getting that margin higher. And then you can scale into that and it'll get you into that next tier of spend on Meta. Because quite often you've realized all of the capacity you've got for volume, and you're not going to fix that anywhere else.
No. And if you don't fix it, that's it, you're stuck.
Yeah, you'll be stuck. And if you don't know about this level of margin and where you should be for your market, because obviously each one of them has a different margin profile, then get in touch. We'll run an audit. We'll have a look at your margin. We'll have a look at your spend versus where your spend's mapping, what products it's going to, what's your average margin per spend. We can enlighten you on where to look to get some more margin and what you need to do next to grow into that next tier of spend.
Definitely.